Oh my frickin' God. We're on episode 4. Didn't think we'd get this 4.
I know. We've almost made it to a week's worth of podcast.
I feel like, can I lean? Oh, I don't think I can.
Oh, to lean on the books?
Oh, I feel like...
Are they falling?
Okay.
Oh, no.
So, I can't do that. So, I'll just sit here.
Okay, there you go.
That would be so annoying. Okay. Hi,
Jared's
guys.
gonna knock over all the books.
Hi, Becca.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah?
It was Thanksgiving, so social battery is up.
It was the time of giving of thanks.
Giving of thanks, gratitude.
Were you giving thanks? Oh, hi, guys. Okay.
Boys, go.
Okay.
Go. Up.
It's so funny. Dogs have no concept of like anything, so they're like, I don't know what is going on at all.
Right. Y'all always want to end up sit. Lay down. Thank you. Thank you.
So welcome to episode 4 of our podcast, Stop Lying to Yourself. I'm
Yes.
Jared.
And I'm Rebecca.
And hello again.
Stop lying to yourself.
I feel like I gave a decent amount of thanks.
Yeah.
Do you think you did?
I would say I'm pretty grateful for a lot of things. I'm grateful for my friends, grateful for family, grateful for the job that I'm able to have at this time as a social worker, because I have a lot more experience now working like with the population I want to work with teenagers. And I'm able to go on these long runs and get ready for a marathon and do a podcast, and I'm doing it all, and I'm grateful for it all.
Mm-hmm. Being able to take care of yourself and take care of other people at the same time. Mm-hmm. We love that. Duality of woman. We love that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I feel like my holiday was pretty good. My brother came to town. My sisters couldn't make it, but it was nice to see some family.
Yeah.
And so that was really nice because we don't always see each other. So it was nice to catch up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are our 2 topics that we're talking about today?
So we are talking about our own self-narrative and dating experiences. So stick around to hear that part. And we also have one request.
We do.
Today.
We got one request.
We got one request of something to talk about. So right now I'm reading this book called Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. And I was reading it and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to read one of these passages on the podcast because I just think it's something really interesting to talk about.
Let's hear it, girlfriend.
So just for clarification, she's a therapist herself, and she's talking about her experience being in therapy. She ends up going to therapy, having some troubles in her relationship, and she goes to therapy. And she's talking about sometimes we imprison ourselves with a narrative of self-punishment. If we have a choice between believing one of 2 things, both of which we have evidence for, I'm unlovable, I'm lovable, often we choose the one that makes us feel bad. Why do we keep our radios turned to the same static-ridden stations, the everyone's life is better than mine station, the I can't trust people station, the nothing works out for me station, instead of moving the dial up or down? Change the station, walk around the bars. Who's stopping us but ourselves? So I thought that was really interesting. What do you think about that, Jared?
I think that's interesting because of what she says. If you're given the 2 options between thinking I'm lovable versus I'm unlovable, that you're going to choose the one that's the most self-deprecating. Mm-hmm. And I actually think that that's... Oh, kitty cat. You're on thin ice. Okay, I'm just making sure she's... My cat loves to sit on my laptop. And so I was... Oh, hi, girlfriend.
I wish she's walking over the wires.
She's scoping out. She is scoping out. Anyway, I like the part where she says, if they have the option to pick between I'm lovable versus I'm unlovable, they'll pick the one that's the most self-deprecating. And I think that's so interesting to me because growing up, I was always preached, be humble, have humility, before anything else. And I think actually that's where a lot of that comes from for most people. I think it's easier to be humble and have humility because then you have less of an opportunity to be embarrassed when you are confident. I think if you do take the option of, I am lovable, I think a lot of people are afraid of switching over into the side of arrogance, and no one likes arrogance. And so I think I think those actually connect really well, because even if we open it up to the broader scope of like modern people now and what we think of their perception, and in this case I would say don't silence women, but I am in fact not a woman, so maybe I needed to be silenced.
Maybe
Men should talk less. I'm joking. Opening it up like to a broader scope of like our modern world and like being hyper aware and like highly having access to so many different people. I think people are scared of being cringe and cringy, and I think that like arrogance and overconfidence is like a huge part of that. And so I think that even more today than ever before, I feel like self-deprecation is like the avenue that a lot of people take because it's just the easiest thing to like stay under the radar and to avoid negative perception of yourself, which is crazy because it might stop negative perception of other people, but in your own mind internally you have a negative perception of yourself because you're telling yourself that you deserve less than what you actually do.
Yeah. I feel like
I've been running around. I need to breathe. What are your thoughts, Beck?
I think like the narrative that we have for ourselves is definitely something that, you know, other people influence, but it's also mainly like a creation of ourselves, since we're kind of like the main character in our lives, and we know the inner turmoil and the stress and everything beneath like ourselves, and not everyone like sees all of that all the time. Like they don't see all the aspects of like the main character that you see in the movie, and that's why when you watch a movie, like you're like pro the protagonist and you're like, and then I was always that person who saw the antagonist and was like, okay, but what's going on with the antagonist? Like, we want to know what's going on behind him. Like,
so you're a lover of the villain origin stories, aren't you?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. You love those.
Yeah, I watched the recent Hunger Games.
Oh, I did too. It was so good. It was so good. I've been saying for the past no spoilers at all. But I've been saying for the past few days I need to go rewatch that because it's just it was so good.
Yeah,
Tom Blythe is so fine. He's so cute.
And even when he like cuts his hair, I was like, damn, how does he look even better?
I know. When he cut his hair, I was on my knees. I said, wow, okay, so I need to walk out. It was too much.
But exactly, like I always wanted to know that stuff because it's like, it's so easy to see your side of the story all the time. And so like, I find that like I self-reflect and like go over that, but sometimes self-reflection can turn to self-deprecation.
Yeah.
So you're like reflecting on something, you're like, you know, being a good human to think about how you could do things better, but then you start being like, oh, it's all my fault, like I'm not good enough, all those things that we start telling ourselves, and it starts going down the rabbit hole of like, how about like, yes, I contributed to hurting somebody, but I'm not an inherently bad person for that. I'm not a bad human for that.
I've said this so many times. This is one of my mantras that I always tell people, and I tell myself, you can do bad things and you can commit a wrongdoing against somebody. If you realize that you did somebody wrong and you change that behavior, you're a good person. If you realize that you did somebody wrong and you keep doing that behavior, that's what makes you a bad person. It's understanding your faults and deciding to continue having those faults as opposed to working every day to try and improve them.
Yeah. And
no one's going to be perfect. That's not like holding everybody to this like crazy, undeniable standard. You can still make mistakes as long as your intentions, are well. Mm-hmm. If you're always pushing yourself to improve and be the best version of yourself you can be, and be kind and be selfless, and that's like what is in the forefront of your mind, I find that you're actually not going to find yourself in in bad situations,
Yeah.
oftentimes, at least ones where you are hurting other people. Because I know that if you're okay with taking accountability for things and understanding that you're not perfect, it's actually quite easy to ask somebody, "Oh, what did I do wrong? How can I resolve and fix what I did?" And most of the times, people are going to be thankful that you took the accountability, or they're going to soften up and kind of see you more as a person as opposed to the perpetrator.
Yeah. I think what I find difficult for myself is like just feeling empowered and feeling like I have something that's good enough to contribute. I think like even being like just having conversations or conflicts with people and having difficulty being like leaving the conversation and thinking that I did anything well. Like I'm on the opposite end where I'm like I'll beat myself up about it. Like I'll just be like, "Oh, like I could have done this better. I could have done that better." And then I'm like, "No, Rebecca, like I have to like talk myself through that and be like, "Hey, like not only like are people not going to respond the way you want to most of the time, like it's like especially when you're like in an argument or a conflict, but also like that it's okay to sit in that sometimes."
My headphones on. Okay, after I so rudely interrupted you, what were you saying?
So just I have difficulties feeling empowered in conversations and feeling like I can advocate for myself sometimes and saying like I feel like I'm so understanding of other people and empathetic of it. But then as soon as I'm oh gosh, I'm so distracted today. Okay.
No, you're good. You're good. We'll get in our groove.
I know. So I've been having difficulties like feeling like I can advocate for myself or feeling like empowered in conversations because I just will be so understanding of what someone's going through and empathetic of someone else's situation, but then I'm not really like standing up for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And like when I do, I feel embarrassed and I feel uncomfortable when I stand up for myself, even if it was something that I know that I needed to do, that was a good thing to do, breaking barriers, I'll still like go home and cry about it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that because if you're somebody who is trying to keep how everyone feels in mind, I think it's an obvious thing that you will sometimes subject yourself to not giving yourself the same treatment. But I think even bigger than that, I think the reason I love that you use the word embarrassed, because I think that specific feeling comes from you're thinking about, you're so used to putting everybody else's feelings above yours that when you do stand up for yourself, one, it's uncomfortable, so it's a little bit embarrassing because it's a new feeling, but also two, you're kind of simultaneously thinking about, oh crap, well I don't want to call them out and make them feel embarrassed or make them feel bad, so you feel kind of embarrassed even talking about it because you're like, I don't want to make you feel bad.
Yeah.
I don't want you to feel, I kind of said last week, like, I don't want you to feel as bad as I've felt before.
Yeah.
And that's like a strong sentiment that I've held a lot, and I think that carries through to a lot of that as well. Because I've talked about this with my best friend. I rarely ever call people out. I think the only people I ever call out is really like my family, because I feel like that's like open range to where you can challenge ideas and you can challenge yourself and other people. But when it comes to other people, like outside of my family, I'm never usually one to like call somebody out or like really challenge somebody, because it's like, I don't know, it causes more like unwanted negative energy that I'm always asking myself, is it necessary really to introduce that idea?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even if it comes from a place of trying to help people, other people's embarrassment and hurting other people's ego and pride oftentimes takes over.
Which sometimes is a good thing, and then there's other times where it's a pro and a con for every good trait that we have. Everyone has traits that are like pros and cons. Like I know other people who stand up for themselves so much so that they don't let people in. So it's like, or they're very like standoffish and stuff, and they don't care what people have to say and stuff like that. And then it's like, whoa, like that's so great. You're able to like talk about those things and be passionate about it. But then like, oh, like, did you not think about how that could hurt somebody? Like, you know.
Yeah,
So.
like there's some people who are too bold to the point where it's like they're completely unaware of how what they're saying comes off to other people and how that can possibly be harmful.
Yeah.
That's why I think the quote where it's like anything good overdone becomes a bad thing.
Yeah.
I think that's why everybody says there has to be a healthy balance, because everyone's narcissism, for example, everyone's narcissistic to a certain extent, but if it's overdone, it's something that's bad. It's when these traits become debilitating towards yourself and to other people, that's when they become problems. They become issues. So it's kind of like you can't, like, I guess narcissism is the just the one I go to, because it's like it's such a strong word, and it's like I think narcissism doesn't necessarily come from a bad place originally, because it comes from like wanting to be right and wanting to have the right answer, but where it becomes narcissism is when you're unwilling to hear other people out.
Yeah.
I
think it's a scale for sure.
It's like confidence and arrogance to an extreme level that becomes harmful to yourself and others, because it completely takes away objectivity.
Yeah, and I think that like you said, anything good, like, then you don't have boundaries if you're just so like fluid and just very like, like laissez-faire about everything. And it's like, okay, well, there's some times where, you should stand up for yourself and say, hey, that's not cool. And that's something that I ran into as well, is the boundaries that you set, people know. So like if I have a certain boundary, like, I don't know, like I was trying to think of something, like if I want my door closed or something, like I was trying to think of something weird. But so you think of a boundary, and then it's like, if people aren't used to you setting those, they're going to like start like being like, huh? Like what? Like, and challenging those, and sticking through those boundaries is good sometimes for yourself.
Right.
And eventually people will recognize like, oh, Rebecca's someone who, people will be like, oh, that person, they don't let them, like they're going to raise hell if you do this, or they're going to like.
Which sucks, because at that point, because we're, the whole argument of, or the whole topic of setting boundaries, it's always hard to do that, because you start understanding that other people perceive you as somebody who has a boundary, and you think, oh, well, is that obnoxious, or is that just like respectable? So it's exactly, like the unknown of how people perceive you having that boundary makes it to where it's kind of like, well, I don't want to have any boundaries at all. I want to be like very like laissez-faire and very like moldable and like bend to other people.
Like you said, society loves that. People love people that are just like moldable.
Yeah,
in that way.
People love people who are, like I mean, this goes into our next topic about like dating, but but even when dating, if you look at other people's like profiles, they say, I'm just looking for somebody who's chill. What does chill mean?
Like, just no one is just chill.
Because I'm pretty fucking chill.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
I would say so.
I'm a pretty chill person, but at the same time, are you looking for somebody who is actually chill? Because you can be chill and have opinions. Or are you looking for somebody that's chill, which basically means that you can do whatever you want and face no consequences?
Ooh.
And that is most of the time what that actually means, from what I've experienced personally. They don't want you to be a person. They want you to be somebody who will just take what they give you and be happy with it. But the second that you challenge it, it's kind of like they realize that you're a human being behind the avatar that is your profile. And it's like...
It's comfortable. Like, it's honestly comfortable for people to have other people around that they know are the same all the time, like consistent. It's like less stressful for our lives to have people in our lives that don't challenge us, that don't change, that stay the same forever.
That's very true. And going back to like self-narrative, like self-reflection, a lot of the time, I never stop thinking. Like I never stop like reflecting about myself, or reflecting about other people, or reflecting about the world. And sometimes I get so into my head and like I'm trying to figure out the answer to everything that sometimes I take a step back and think, am I obnoxious? Am I like too much for people? Do I challenge people too much? I never know if I'm doing too much or too little. And I think that, I don't know. I guess I don't really have like a solid point to make on that, because it's something I still kind of struggle with figuring out.
Which is fine. We talk about things we struggle with on here. Not everything's figured out.
Yeah.
Some of it's going to be stuff we're working through currently. And like, honestly, I believe there is no right answer on how to do it. Like, that's the thing that really all of us have to sometimes think, and it can feel extreme, but sometimes we just have to think, like, there is no right answer to doing all the right things. There is no doing the right thing because it will be wrong to somebody else. So it's really doing what your gut tells you, what you've experienced, and like you said, learning from your experiences and trying to, like, the next time you're put in a similar experience, make a different choice.
So then that's an interesting thing that I have to ask you is, I mean, do you think that I do think that there is an objective line between what is right and wrong? Because I think there is.
It depends.
I understand that right and wrong is subjective, but I do feel like there's a line that people should be conscientiously aware of that is right and wrong. Even if somebody does a bad thing, and you can get down to the context and understand why they did the bad thing, there can still be a bad person who does a bad thing. It doesn't mean that if you do a bad thing, there's always going to be a good person behind that bad thing. And I think that's what a lot of...
Yeah.
I'd like to think people like me and people like you get kind of trapped into... I'm not going to speak for yourself. I'll speak for myself. Is getting trapped into thinking that everybody has good intentions for you. And that is not always true. And that, I think that gets you in situations and in relationships and friendships that don't serve you as much as they should, because you are always trying to justify the actions of other people and what other people are doing to you, as opposed to just understanding the facts of life and understanding, like, the reality of what they did. If they did that, it means it's very strong. It's like the actions speak louder than words. You can try and justify actions as much as possible, but if somebody cheats on you, somebody cheats on you. They didn't want you enough. They weren't thinking about you enough to not cheat on you. And so it's kind of like...
But remember how I, like, mentioned, like, I feel like, so there's right things for you and maybe not for somebody else. Or, like, it may be right for somebody else. Like how I said, someone, like, you know, just because someone cheats, does that mean they don't deserve a good, fulfilling relationship with somebody else in the future?
That's true.
Like, I don't think I can hold that against them, knowing, like, they made this decision that I know, you know, that they know is wrong, and we're already a bully ourselves. And it's really like you said, are you a serial cheater? You know, like that. Or are you someone who made that choice and now, you know, you've recognized, like, why you did that. You went to therapy, you made the steps to work on yourself, and now you're in a new relationship. And I don't think that new relationship should hold that against you. They should understand and be aware of it, but not to hold it against you from your past decisions.
But I think it's also... There are certain behaviors too surrounding that you can kind of tell if somebody cheated and they know that it was wrong and they know that they're not going to do it again, versus I feel like that's always like what you were saying, following a gut feeling of knowing if you are aware that someone's cheated before. I feel like you can tell based off of every other behavior or other things that they say whether or not they're going to do it again. I guess that's something I kind of struggle with. I think I am an opinionated person, not opinionated to a fault, but I think sometimes it confuses me because I have strong opinions, and also from experiences that I've gone through, certain biases that I try to take out of my feelings and take out of my arguments. That's something I still kind of struggle with, but at the same time, that's why I say if you try to justify everything, are you also putting yourself in a dangerous situation as well than just accepting what is sometimes. Yeah,
that sometimes it's not a good thing that you cheated, and I can be mad about that, and like to feel justified in that, you mean?
Yeah, and not just with cheating, but it kind of goes with any wrongdoing. I think cheating was just the example that we were using, but like just with anything.
That morally you'd be like, against.
Yeah, it's kind of like not everything is morally ambiguous, and people do have intentions, and you can't explain away people's intentions in hopes that they're going to be good. Sometimes they just don't have good intentions.
And sometimes your intentions don't matter because you're still going to do like actions, and you may have intended to not harm someone while you're doing it. I've done things or said things that I think in my head I'm intending to not hurt someone, and then I do. Right.
And like in hindsight, when you're looking back in hindsight is when you are kind of like, oh, well, maybe I wasn't right there. Yeah. And then that's when I've had to, before, like, there have been times where I've, like, snapped before, and I've gone to my room and it's been like 10 minutes and I sit there with myself and I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. And so then I go back, even though it's been 10 minutes, and I'm like, I apologize and say sorry, because it's like, what am I going to do? Sit there and not say sorry and brood and try and build up a reason as to why I was justified in doing that, when I know in my heart that I wasn't justified in treating somebody like that. So the obvious response is to go and apologize to that person.
Yeah.
And it gets me in sometimes better situations than I was in before. You know, it builds relationships, you know, because then they see that you're able to recognize their feelings, consider their feelings, and so they can trust you more in the future.
I think I just always try to stay open-minded. Like, I would say I have, like I said, I have, like, opinions on things for sure. But there's certain times where I'm like, is this the time for me to get myself, like, passionately worked up with somebody, knowing that this would be a trigger, or not a trigger, but it would be, I guess, like a trigger, like that if I know I bring this up and they don't agree with that, you know, and I know they don't agree with that, like, maybe I should be aware that, like, they're not changing their opinion on that. So I try to stay open-minded, and when I'm having, like, a conflict with someone, like, sometimes I think to myself, like, and this has helped me a lot through a lot of my conflict resolution, is, like, first off, why do I want to tell them that? Is this because I want, like, to prove something to them? We kind of said that last time, but it's like, is this because I want to try to prove to this person that they need to see my side? Or do I want to enlighten them and tell them something maybe they haven't heard before? Because I think it is good to challenge people outside of your family too, especially your family, but just everyone, because I realized, like, I was somebody for a while that just was a supporter, but then I realized you're reinforcing people's behaviors and you're like telling them, oh, it's okay to be that way, when really it's not. And like, I would want my friends to tell me something that I don't see that I'm doing. There's a lot of times that, like, I don't realize something is a trigger until afterwards, and you're like, I didn't realize, like, I would get worked up about something like that. So I think, like, that kind of goes actually into our question. We had a question from Instagram.
Oh, we got one request.
One request.
We got one.
About what are your favorite ways to get through a panic attack? So I'm going to respond with that, kind of with what I was talking about, which is figuring out your triggers, figuring out, like, what, and sometimes you figure them out afterwards and you're like, okay, I'm taking note that when I talk about this, my heart starts racing, my hands start shaking, like, I start wanting to get mad, like, those things, or, like, can end up leading to a panic attack for me. For everyone, it's going to be different. Some people don't mention, like, their heart racing as something they notice first, but really whatever you notice, like, your hands getting sweaty, like, and things like that. And I'll kind of, like, tell myself, Becca, it's time to self-regulate. It's time to self-regulate. And I will, if I won't remove myself immediately if I have to, like, talk through the conversation or kind of find an end to it. But when I find the end to it, then I will remove myself. I've gone on walks before too. Walks really help. And just moving my body, because when I'm anxious, it feels like it's kind of like a motor that keeps running and you're trying to, like, slow the motor down. So it's like just trying to slow myself down. And, like, that's my first thing, is, like, don't think about why am I having a panic attack? And you can figure that out after you have the anxiety. Like, when I'm having that anxiety, I'll try to slow it down and be like, right now I recognize I have anxiety. I recognize that I'm feeling triggered, and right now it's time to self-regulate. And that is the goal right now. Once I get down from there, I can understand why. And as soon as those, like, thoughts are coming in, like those intrusive thoughts of, like, okay, like, no, I need to figure it out, or like, let me walk through everything that I talked to about that person. Like, I'll start going through the conversation that I had with them and trying to figure out what they're thinking and what I'm thinking and how they're feeling and how I'm feeling. And it's like, that's not helping you, honey.
Yeah.
So it's like, sometimes you have to be like, I need to take care of me first before I figure out the why. And sometimes you won't even figure out the why. It's like just stuff you're making up in your head.
Right.
So it's like,
and also too, if your panic attacks stem from something that you don't know what the reason is, I think that in that situation, it's important to do something that distracts yourself.
Yeah.
Distracting yourself during panic attacks or in general isn't always good, because then you're distracting yourself from the problem. But in situations where you don't understand what the problem is, like a panic attack, it's good to find an activity that you can do, like with your hands, or just something physical that can distract you from that attack. But also as well, sometimes that doesn't work for people.
Yeah.
Sometimes sometimes they're aware that they're trying to distract themselves, which makes them more anxious.
Yeah.
So I think in that situation, at least what's helped me before, I think, is reminding yourself that you're not the only one who goes through this. There are many people who go through this, and if they can champion a panic attack, then so can I. So I think it's like mantras that help lift yourself up, tell yourself that you're capable of getting through it. Like, feelings are temporary, they pass, and so you just have to strengthen through for when they do pass. I think that grounding yourself is incredibly important. One thing that is, not the bitch is interrupting me, but I think grounding yourself is incredibly important, because in situations where I have, sometimes I get lightheaded during some, and I don't have like routine panic attacks. This is just when I've had a few, but sometimes grounding yourself, like I love the name 5 things in the room. Like, I've had a panic attack at work and had to go to the bathroom, and I've had to sit there, like, hold myself and like touch things and be like, that's a bathroom stall door, that's a tile, that's a red tile, that's a white tile, there's the toilet, like there's the ground.
Or if you're walking, like looking at the trees and what color is the tree and stuff like that.
Just like, and whatever it is that is overwhelming you, whether that be being overstimulated of just everything around you is too much, then close your eyes. Close your eyes, force yourself to take 10 deep breaths. And that all sounds so cliche, but like,
Or I put my hand, like, and I try to like tell myself to focus on slowing my heart rate down and stuff like that. Like, and just focusing on something, like you said.
Panic attacks happen for different reasons for different people, and so different things, several solutions work. It's just a matter of how you are during panic attacks. I don't get incredibly charged during panic attacks. I'm like a tea kettle, if that makes sense. It's all contained, but it's kind of like bubbling over. So it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, I kind of start
like slowly rising.
Yeah, I start to like slowly spiral, and then I can feel that happening. So when I feel myself starting to spiral, there have been things that I can find that make me not spiral so hard. Like, if you've been watching, you know that I figure skate. Sometimes when I go to sleep, I developed this weird like anxiety right before I go to sleep, because I know that when I go to sleep and I put my phone down, it's the time where it's just me and my thoughts, and that scares me sometimes. And so I would get anxious before going to bed. When I have those anxious thoughts, I have found that if I think about how to do a double jump, or if I think about how to do a spin, if I start thinking about the mechanics, I suddenly forgot about what was making me anxious enough in time for me to fall asleep. Yeah. So it might be something that recurs, but if you understand how to manage it, if it is something that's recurring, it helps a lot. Because you might feel bad about yourself that it doesn't go away at all. Yeah. But if it's something that stays around for a while, if it's a pattern, just learn how to deal with the pattern. It's not your best friend, but it's something that you can manage. And if you learn...
Don't fight it.
Yeah, if you learn certain coping mechanisms to help with that, then it makes your life a lot easier.
Yeah, allow it to flow. And like sometimes... I remember seeing that it's like 7 minutes or something like that is like the longest you can have a panic attack. Or at least like... you know, the height of it. So I kind of tell myself like you said, like, this isn't forever. Like, no one can like have panic attack 24 hours straight. Yeah. I think if someone has, let's talk about it. Come on the pod and tell us about it.
Fucking tell us, because I'd like to know.
But I think like, you know, sometimes there's just going to be like you said, it's like habitual. Your body probably like gets used to that. Like that's its reaction now. It's like a fight or flight response. So it's like it's immediate for your body to feel like you have to do that if you're having them like often. And I actually have overcome it to the point of like it only happens if like, you know, a huge event happens in my life. Well, what I would describe as a huge event in my life. But for a while, it was for like little things. And that's because also I wasn't aware of my thoughts and feelings, behaviors, stuff like that I did work through in therapy. So we recommend therapy.
Yes.
But,
and if you can't afford therapy, hopefully we can be here to help you out.
yeah. And also, like,
which is why we started the podcast to begin with.
Exactly. It's like we are going to give you what we know, what we're learning. And
it's also something you have your bachelor's in it. I'm currently an undergrad, so it's like something we're trying to become knowledgeable about. So we're not entirely uncredible.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Continue, sorry.
No, but it's just like anxiety is kind of what I think I'm going to specialize in anyways, like when it comes to anxiety and depression and stuff like that, because everyone has their niches and stuff and what they work on. But I think I've found too that a lot of it really is like a lot of it for me was just I like the tea kettle reference that you're saying, and mine's kind of like a motor, and like everyone's is going to be different in the way that they go about it. But
if you can find that certain example, and you can picture yourself as that inanimate
visualizing
object, if you visualize what you're having a problem with, exactly, then you can kind of like, it's all about understanding on a sense level, like all your five senses, understanding kind of like if there are different ways to conceptualize these uncertain feelings, that can also help as well.
Yeah. And I think just, opening up and being more vulnerable and being more, like, for me, what also really helped is taking the shoulds and coulds out, like how I said last time, but it's like where you're going to the extreme of things and start challenging your anxiety. When I would get super anxious, I would start writing down the things that make me very get me to that point and make me the most anxious. Like, write down anything you could possibly imagine that would just make you so anxious, and then work through it, and let's break it down. Break down each kind of sentence that you're saying to yourself. For me, if I'm saying like I should have said this or I should have done that, like I'll be like, okay, let's say you did this and you hurt someone. How can we be okay with that? How can we be okay with this?
Right.
If it is the truth. Because a lot of it is the unknown or the fear of the future and stuff like that.
Right.
So let's say that your friends all do leave you. You're so afraid of that. Mm-hmm. What are we going to do about that? Let's make a plan. And sometimes that helps.
No, you're right, because in a sense you're eliminating that fear for yourself. You're giving yourself a solution to this existential fear that seems unbeatable, but that's a good example. Say that all your friends do leave you. Do you have your family? If you have your family,
can we find new friends?
Yeah. Find
what
new
about
friends.
Your work friend? Is there anyone at work you could be friends with? Like finding those solutions. There's somebody out there that could be your friend.
Exactly. And also too, I think I said this last week, but it's always good to know that if there's no external influences, that you are okay on your own. Does that mean we want you to have no one?
No.
Of course not.
No.
Because that's like isolation. That puts you in a place to go down a bad spiral. Hopefully all of that helped.
Yeah, if you want us to go in detail on anything else, let us know. Ask questions, go DM us on Instagram, YouTube channel.
We have our YouTube channel, we have our TikTok, we have our DMs, we have the email like you just said. We've got so many avenues, and we're never going to say your name. So if you genuinely have an issue or a problem that you need help solved, and you just need an outside perspective, let us know. Yeah,
it could just be like I'm having a problem with my boyfriend or my dad or my sister.
Yeah,
and, we'll talk about it.
Having a problem at work,
work.
We'll try and help you as much as
Money.
we can.
Let's talk about it all.
Should we go on to our next topic?
Yep.
Next topic being
dating experiences.
Dating experiences. And you had on there that it was like experiences dating on dating apps as well. But I feel like I've kind of dipped my toes into that topic a little bit already. But what do you think?
So I've been in a few relationships. I kind of always loved having a long-term relationship, and my attachment style is securely attached and then mixed with some anxious avoidant as well mixed in there, but mostly secure, which I recommend doing an attachment style quiz and figuring out what your attachment style is, because it's very interesting to find that out. And basically what I've experienced whenever I was on dating apps and stuff is just like I would consider myself to be like demisexual. So I don't want to be with anybody sexually they if we're not connected emotionally.
Yeah. Unless there's an emotional connection.
It has to be emotional. Otherwise, I feel like shit.
Yes.
And honestly, it's like one of those things where it's like I went in situations and I would just be so upset afterwards. Like, why did I have this one night stand? Like, why did I do that? And like, I thought, like, there's actually a thing nowadays with women where it's like we want to feel so empowered that we could just have one night stands that we just go do them. Like, that's actually a big thing.
Mm-hmm. It's honestly, it's not just with women. It's also with like gay men as well. Because I would love to open it up to all men, but I don't want to. I really don't think. I think it's different for straight men.
Yeah, it is.
And just a lot of even a lot of gay men too. I think it just really depends. I think if you're the. You know what? Continue your point.
So like, yeah, like I would, just meet people on Tinder, meet people on wherever you meet them. But this was like in college, so I wasn't really in a place, I knew I wasn't in a place that was good to just be like meeting up with random strangers and going to their houses, but did it anyways.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where like, oh, I'm in a college town, this and that. Actually, a lot of terrible things happen in these college towns.
Yeah.
That's like where a lot of sexual assault happens and rape and all that stuff. Trafficking. We will put a little flag on this for the stuff that we talk about, by the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually, I think I'm going to be vulnerable in our podcast and say that did happen to me. I was sexually assaulted in college. And
I'm sorry.
It's okay. But it's one of those situations where this was like someone that I knew that I'd met up with a few times, but they definitely took advantage of the situation because I was drinking and stuff, and I didn't remember it the next day, but I knew that I was not, that had happened to me.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where somebody had picked me up after that, and I told them, like, and I was vulnerable with them about it, and they were like, why'd you go to that guy's place? Like, seriously? Like, you're stupid. And I was like, fuck. Like, oh my God, I felt so mortified. And he dropped me off, and I just was like crying at home, just like, oh my God, like started feeling like it's my fault, feeling guilty and all of that, which is typical of those scenarios. And a lot of people are not educated. People are not educated on, when people are like that hammered to like not sleep with them and consent and all of that. Like, I learned that way too late. And like also just being able to, and there were times where like in my previous relationship where my partner would he like said that I needed to get like libido pills and this and that because I wasn't having sex enough with him. And there's scenarios like that where like, and I started thinking maybe it is a me problem. Like, it's just typical to like think it's a you problem. Like, because I trusted people and I thought these people were good people.
But at the same time, though, if you're in a relationship and like you said, you need emotional fulfillment in order to even want to proceed further. So if you're in a relationship where they're not providing you that emotional fulfillment and that vulnerability, then you're not going to want to, because it's like if you're going to let somebody in that vulnerable of a manner, you want them to truly care for you and not view you as just a sexual object. I'm so sorry that happened. If it makes you feel better, I've been through similar experiences. It's really weird thinking about like, in a weird way, I feel like I was kind of delayed when it came to dating, if that makes sense. I mean, I was always with somebody from the time I was like 12, which that's not delayed, but I had girlfriends until I realized like, hey, I don't like women like that. And then when I first started experimenting with guys, it was when I was in high school. And as a gay guy, it's not always easy to go through those feelings openly at home or openly in general. And so what do? You go on your phone and you go to hookup apps and dating apps, and Grindr is one of those main apps. It's one of the main apps, but I think as a younger kid, it's very dangerous. I first got on when I was 16, and I lost my virginity to somebody who was twice my age. And it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, I made the decision. I drove over there, and I consented to it. But I think that dating apps, when it comes to dating, I don't think serve actual dating.
Yeah.
Dating apps are like, kind of like a slot machine. You kind of just scroll through and pick and choose and see what your odds are, and it's like it's too much immediate validation that you don't actually understand who you're doing stuff with and who you're meeting up with. Yeah. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized how weird that situation was.
Yeah.
And he knew how old I was. I think he was like 31, 32, something around there. But also, too, he was a sex addict.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I went into an experience that I didn't know all of the repercussions of, because for the next 2 years after that, I wasn't having sex with people I was attracted to. I was just doing it because that was my first experience, and he did it so much.
Yeah.
You know, there would be sometimes I would show up and there would be 2 other people there. And then I would freeze and I'd be like, I wouldn't want to do it, obviously, but in that situation, you don't want to say no, and you don't want to, you know what I mean? So you just kind of go through with it.
No, yeah.
And it wasn't until
it's being naive, and you don't know.
Yeah, especially being 17, 16, 17 years old, and you're in an older man's house. It's like, it's not. And it really wasn't until I got into
also, people don't talk about that stuff at all, so
yeah,
that's another thing.
Yeah.
Or they're doing better now about talking about it, but like back then, even
even
5
gay
years
sex
ago,
education, you don't hear anything about that in school, so you're not informed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because they don't want to tell us about it, so then we go out and figure it out ourselves.
Yeah, they don't want to. Yeah, they don't want to indoctrinate the children, but it's like it sets up kids who are in the LGBT community to kind of have very scary experiences, because there's no template. There's no template for what you're kind of supposed to do and how you're supposed to find other people and navigate like a sexual and romantic life. Mm-hmm. But it really wasn't until I got like my first boyfriend, which was my last relationship, because I've really only had one. It wasn't until I had finally been involved with somebody that I was really attracted to that I understood what I was allowing to happen and what I had gotten used to, and how that first experience had shaped how I operated romantically and sexually as well.
It's unfortunate when you actually meet a good person and you're like, oh, this is supposed to be the standard. And that's unfortunate.
And that's what really sucks, is that the same person that I'm talking about is also the same person I talked about in the last few episodes, who wound up being one of the worst people for me. So then you're left at 22, 23 years old and really wondering, have I actually ever experienced what real romantic love feels like? Because all those experiences have been tainted, and you've given forth your best effort time and time again, and it seems like, well, do I deserve that? And if so, then how do I deal with that? You know what I mean? So
I'm so glad we're talking about it, even though it's very vulnerable. I think it's really important for people to hear.
Yeah. I think, and now I've been single for about like a year, a little over a year, and the person that I was with before was a serial dater. And it was one of those things where I think this happens a lot more often now that dating apps are prevalent. I think that people can't stand being by themselves, and people can't stand being lonely. And so they cling on to anybody and anyone.
Settling with people.
As something that's comfortable, as opposed to really like getting to know somebody and really caring for somebody. And it feels like we live in a society of like constant placeholders. And I feel like, but also at the same time, I understand that I'm probably in a biased spot right now based off of what I'm going through currently. And like your ideas of dating are probably different than mine because of where you're at currently. And I think it's just hard because it's still something I don't have an answer for. You know what I mean? It's like you can't look for. It's like you can't constantly be looking for love because you're really not going to find it. It really is until you stop looking is when someone happens to come along, and it's because you're not focused on it.
I think I would rather, and people won't admit it because they, like you said, we're just in a society now, or the age now, the expectations of 20s to just be like in these like long-term relationships and like people getting married and all that. But it's like at the end of the day, like I would rather feel alone and be alone than to feel alone in a relationship.
Yes, because that's worse. Because at least when you're alone by yourself, you have the opportunity to build up yourself and to love yourself and to like yourself and who you are, as opposed to if you're with somebody and you're alone in that relationship.
And make you feel lesser than.
Yeah, you don't even have room to grow. They don't allow you room to grow.
Yeah.
And this got very, very deep, like more deep than I thought it would. But I think it's good to be. I think this is something that people, whoever listens, needs to hear, because I see on TikTok and Twitter and all that so often that like love, it feels like love doesn't exist anymore because of dating apps, and it's like it's because dating apps allow us to be so desensitized to the fact that there's another person on the other end of that.
Yeah, we're like swiping them away. Literally,
when you see a dating profile, that's their best version of themselves. You know what I mean? Like that's not going to be all of who they are, you know? And also, if you're on dating apps to just have sex and go, there's hookup apps for that. Like, don't get on the dating apps to do that. And also, just like, I don't know, if you're looking to have sex and just have sex, I mean, that's something to go to therapy for and figure out, because if you're not looking for an emotional connection, then you're just going to be stuck in a constant cycle of doing that for the rest of your life, and you're going to feel unfulfilled because
you can have sex with yourself.
That I was literally talking to my best friend the other day, and I was like because
if that's all you're thinking about, like the other person's just a body at that point.
No, seriously.
And at the same time, like,
and you can get that anywhere, especially on dating apps.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know what it's like to be somebody who just wants to do that. So I don't know how I can like fully put my full judgment into it, because at the same time, it's like, what if that's, something that both of the parties want and they both agree upon?
No, that's when it's different.
Yeah.
Like if that is, you just want to have fun, go for it. But that's usually the problem, is that people aren't honest.
And
if
also
that makes sense.
There's a lot of times it's like one party doesn't want that.
Yes.
And they're just settling for that.
Me usually being that party.
I know.
Me usually being that party.
It's like, it's hard to know for sure that the other party like wants that too. But I guess like as long as that both parties are like communicating like very often about it, like, hey, like this is okay, right? Like, and making sure. I think that's good.
Yeah.
And also, if you're going to do that and you're a male, and we're talking about a heterosexual relationship, make sure your girl is pleased, okay?
Seriously. I mean,
like, do that before you go and do yours, because if it's just going to be you, then you could do it by yourself.
No, seriously. And I'm going to be honest too, even as a gay guy, if you're trying to do that too, at least finish them off. Exactly. Don't just do your business and then go and then think that's
the thing. They just leave after that.
A lot of them do. I think you underestimate like how barbaric and monkey-like so many men are. Even gay men. I'm not excusing y'all. Y'all are gross.
Oh my god.
And it's
that's
like
fucked up.
It is, and like it's even like in places like LA. I'll say it, like all of like these huge groups of like gay guys, of like 30 gay guys, they've all screwed each other. They've all had an orgy. It's kind of like, at a certain point, what is fun and what is desensitizing? At what point is it fun versus you're
I don't
not
like the
even
culture of like, also like I was thinking that like a lot of times we're in a bar and it's like they're all just like looking to mate, you know? It's like
it's so primal.
They're all
It's
out
like
there.
seriously, it's like
why
it's
can't
like,
we all actually dance like they used to, you know? I mean, I'm sure they like
in the
all have the
2000s
same-
clubs, like when they had like stereo love and shit, and
Like,
people
why
were like
can't we do
actually
that?
dancing.
Why can't we actually dance and not have a guy like scared that a guy's gonna come up on you or like
Yeah.
things right behind you? It's like
Yeah.
also like ask for that. Ask if we can dance, and we say no. Walk away. Don't stand behind people and just linger.
Oh, I saw a video of that just the other
that
day.
happens so often, and it's terrible.
Yeah.
And
It's
also just like these like older men's like. There's different bars for different people, okay? Like, don't be
Yeah.
going to a bar where everyone's young and you're like a lot older and you're just staring at people. Don't do
Yeah.
that. I don't think those people will be listening to our podcast. So.
Yeah.
If you know someone like that, please tell them, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
You're creepy. And also, like, it's just, I mean, just our culture, man.
Yeah.
It's all like sex positive, which is like, hey, like, go get it. But
Which
it's like,
wonderful. Like, I mean, that's the thing is, it's like people who want an emotional connection aren't prudes. You know, like
Yeah.
you can be a freak and still want to like have feelings involved. That's
yeah,
like the
how about
difference.
let's talk before we go, that we don't just walk in and clothes are already off. Like,
Yeah, and I've had way too many experiences like that. I've had I think a lot of it too is like people use sex as like a form of validation that becomes self-harm. And once you realize that, it's kind of like, oh God, you have to rewire yourself because you think,
and those people never get an apology. It's like, even if they were going through something in their life and they go do that to someone and they know that they did, it's like, I've never heard of someone like going back and being like, I used you. Because they couldn't tell you that.
100%.
But it's like, what the fuck?
I've had a situation where I've like tried to get to know them and it like he sent me a message that was just like, he was like, yo, can you like let me this week? And I was like, I'm gonna be real. You seem like you only want to use me for what's here, and you can find somebody else very easily. So,
Yeah. And then they wonder why it's so hard for us to trust these people. And then
no,
it's like-
exactly. The only thing I got back was whatever, and I was like, whatever. Do you really think that makes me feel good? And then I kind of went off on him, and all I got was, I'm sorry. And I was going to respond, no, you're not. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because he's just going to go find somebody else.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's frustrating being somebody who wants love but can't find it because it's like we live in this world where it's like everything is so
Selfish.
selfish. It's like no one wants to give themselves to somebody else anymore. But then again, that's me being incredibly pessimistic and like cynical because clearly that's not true because there are people in relationships right now.
Well,
It's
there's
just
people that are, and they want this. They think they want this, and then they're like, they push people away. Like, maybe they did want like an emotional connection, and then they end up pushing people away. Or like you said, like,
Yeah.
it's like masking it and stuff. And it's like, just be yourself with these people. Like you said, it's getting that instant gratification of like, ooh, I'm getting, you know, I'm getting laid tonight, and then, but it's like, no one wakes up the next morning feeling like, I feel so empowered. I mean,
I just
maybe.
got laid.
I'd be
I'm
scared.
gonna go about my day. It's like like my idea
Especially
is
after a drunken night, which is like half of these that
Yeah.
would describe it.
yeah.
It's like,
Well, that's
would
actually
you make the same decision when you're sober?
well, that's interesting because that's two different experiences. All of mine have been sober.
Really?
Yeah, because I don't drink and I never have. So it's one of those. So it's one of those things where it's like it's not an impulse control problem, and if it is, it usually is like it's usually me caving into the fact that I'm leaning on it for validation that
But also, I
am
mentioned to you
wanted.
drunken nights, but when people say that, it's like just an excuse half the time because some of these people are sober. They've had like only 2 drinks and they're like, I was just drunk.
Yeah,
Girly,
be
You
real.
were just drunk.
Stop lying to yourself.
stop lying to yourself.
Stop lying to yourself.
Because we sure aren't lying, and then you know that we've given you our personal business.
Yeah. I feel like there was more that I wanted to talk about on this topic, but I feel like maybe like once I have more of my because we got vulnerable.
Oh, dating
so-
experience. It's not even dating experience. We talked about just being used and abused at that point.
Which, if that's dating, girl, we need to
Being
do some
chewed and spit out.
rewiring.
That's what we talked about.
Yeah, being chewed up and spit out.
But honestly, that's what you need to know about before you go in these dating experiences.
No, seriously. I mean,
You have to know the hard truth.
this is also for people who are the user and the abuser. Like, if you do this,
You've done that.
if you do this, we're not saying you're a bad person. You're being one, but if you do this, maybe let's rethink and reflect a little bit. Like, are you...
Let's journal. Let's go to therapy.
Are you cheating yourself of a more fulfilling emotional connection than just what you're doing right now, which is this vicious cycle and vicious pattern of... Because in a sense, you're using other people, but you're using yourself.
Yeah, because
You
you're
know
not going to get anything out of it either.
Exactly.
Except for a nut.
And, sir, you can do that at home. I've done it. It's so fucking easy. You can do it at home. Why do you need another person there? What's the point? Because that's the thing I've always asked. Like, what's the point of having another person there? Like, I don't know. They got flashlights.
Maybe we're missing something. And if we're missing something, let us know.
Please let us know, because I'm not trying to lie to myself no more. Seriously.
And with that being said,
stop lying to yourself.
Stop lying to yourself.